Alright, so I'm recording the stereo I had put in my car probably over a year ago, and not too surprising, it stopped producing a sound. See, I'm going to play a radio, put it on 3.5, no sound. Raises the volume, nothing. Raise the volume here, nothing. It started popping sound and a sound would come in and out. Now it's completely dead. Just try any radio. Is this thing the same radio? Try this thing. Try the music CD. Dead. Completely no audio. So the next step is to remove it and see if I can attempt to repair it. Alright, so this is the Lexus IS250 Chinese aftermarket stereo, and this one has failed. The sound, when you turn on the car, sometimes there would be no sound. So, you know, sometimes it would work, and sometimes you get a popping noise from the speakers and no audio. And this component right here, this is the MOSFET that powers and does the sound. I've actually replaced these before with some success, that changing the MOSFET will fix no audio coming from the radio. And yeah, it's pretty much just like our standard radio. You can see that there is no heatsink for the system on chip, which I think is this one, or maybe it's the underneath. I think it's this thing underneath is the system on chip. Not much of a heatsink, so but that actually isn't faulty. The radio, the Android functionality works fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to order one of these and all these capacitors, because these are not quality capacitors. Whatever these aren't quality. So I'm going to get like Rubicons to replace these and a MOSFET for this, and for now, yeah, you can see how much thermal paste they put on. They put a lot. Probably not good quality, but I doubt that's the reason why this failed. I think it just failed because that's a cheap Chinese thing. And if anyone was wondering how it hooks up to the radio, well, there it is. Just this cable is what hooks up to the display. Yeah, so I'm going to order some parts and see if I can fix this. Alright, mistakes were made. Turns out this stereo wasn't bad, because I hooked up the OEM stereo into the car and it is still popping and not having sound on some occasions. Might be the amp in the back trunk. Maybe there's a bad connection. And in taking this chip out, I broke some of the traces. So the solution I have is these wires, which I solder from underneath to where they need to go. Right about there. I took the liberty to replace these capacitors, put some quality ones, Rubicon and some other, whatever that brand is. Try to see if I can make it run more stable or something, but this wasn't the problem. It's something else in the car. The stereo actually turns out to be fine, but maybe now it isn't. We'll see. So yeah, like I said, mistakes were made. I thought this radio was no good. I did change the amp chip to, I think, an ST. I'll go back and look at what I ordered to replace this amp IC chip, and I put quality capacitors, and it's working now. It wasn't this. I think there's an issue with the amp and this amplifier in the trunk that tends to have corroded wires, especially when it rains, and noticeably the audio stops working regardless what radio I have in here, either this one or the OEM. Doesn't make a difference. But I didn't really do a good job wiring it the first time. As you can see, I didn't wire tie anything, but noticeably I found that this is the portion of the radio, the upper portion that makes the sound. I mean, that's the radio. Because the OEM radio sounds fantastic, but this is the one that gets accurate. So you can hear it's really bad, but if I grab these wires and crunch them, these are the antenna wires. If you let them loose, they get worse signal. So I'm going to wire tie this up, but yeah, mistakes were made. But hey, I put better quality capacitors and a better IC amp chip. I must have did something right. Alright, so this is the finished product. The audio still cuts out in this when I first started in the morning. Sometimes you hear this popping noise, but
Oh
it
no!
happened with the OEM radio and it happened with this radio, so it makes no difference. But notably, with the new better quality capacitors and the new IC amp MOSFET chip from ST, the radio actually sounds better. Here, watch. This is the OEM, not the OEM. This is the aftermarket radio built into the unit. That now here's the OEM radio. So it actually did whatever I did made the radio that comes with the new stereo sound better, and to the point where it's almost equal to whatever is in the factory radio. So and to a degree that I really don't even have to worry about the fact that the factory radio is because of the frequency. This is not 95.4. I think that's actually 103.5. So it actually sounds better. All right, so to finally wrap up this mistake, I've fixed the audio problem with the car, and it wasn't the radio at all, but it was the amp in the back of the trunk of the car. Now, I'm not going to show you how to get to it because it's really easy to get to. There's two 10mm bolts to hold it together. And I just pulled it out, sprayed some WD-40 in the electrical connectors, plugged it back in, and for more than a week, audio hasn't cut out, no popping noises, so everything's fine now. But what I did notice is the radio quality, and the overall audio quality is now better. Now this is the chip I had put in there. Now why do I have another one of these chips? Because this one I got from eBay, and the one that's in the car I got from DigiKey. This took more than a month, and as you can see, the shipping has bent some of the pins. Not that this chip isn't usable, but this is what I put in there, what was to replace the original amp chip. I think the amp chip was a Ming Ying something, I forget the name, and you could barely see the numbers, but here you can easily see that this is written to be TDA 7388. This is what I put in there, along with replacing the large capacitors. I put mostly Rubicon. There was a few Nixons I think I put in there, but they're all good quality capacitors as far as I know. And the overall, the radio quality is now better, the one that comes with the radio. The OEM always sounded better, but at least the one that's built in it actually sounds better. Might be due to this chip, might be the capacitors, don't know. But if anyone's ever interested in doing the same thing, which something to remind you is that the one I pulled out of that circuit, I pulled it out. I was not patient with my desoldering, and then I ended up ripping up out some of the traces. So that's why you saw some wires. So if anyone wants to do it, one of these is actually very cheap, like $5 to $8, and it might actually improve the audio quality of the radio. Anyway, that's something, and if people are interested, this is something you may want to try.